Hello and welcome back to HR Stew. My name is Regina Dyerly.
And I'm Holly Nels.
And this is HR Stew.
Workplace bullying doesn't always look like playground name calling. It can be subtle, strategic, and incredibly damaging. In today's episode, we're taking a closer look at what bullying looks like in the modern workplace, how to identify it, and what HR and leadership can do to protect employees and prevent long-term cultural damage. Whether it's a toxic boss, a two-faced teammate, or exclusion masked as team dynamics, workplace bullying is more common than you think, and more harmful than it appears. Today we're joined again by VidaHR's very own HR compliance coordinator, Sean Hansen. Welcome back, Sean.
Welcome, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with a question. What has been the most impactful experience you've had with workplace bullying?
I know I've talked about this. However, when I think I was 18 or 19, I worked at a gas station because that's what you do at 18 or 19. And our boss, she was a very nice lady up until she hired and was training another regional manager or GM or something. And I worked there with a friend of mine. So me and my friend go into work one Friday or Saturday, and there was a note or a memo or something up on the counter. And I read it, and she tells me and my friend Kim to come back to the back. She wants to have a discussion with us. And I'm like, okay, that's odd. So we go back to the back, and the two of them, my manager at the time and the trainee, and then myself and my friend Kim. And we're sitting back there and we're having a discussion about the memo. And I don't remember, it was years ago, exactly what was said or what happened. But all of a sudden, the manager slaps my friend Kim. She's 18. This slaps her across the face.
Oh my gosh.
And I am stunned and staring at the whole situation. What just happened? We're kids. And we didn't know what to do. So we walked out, and needless to say, we did not go back to work there. And we took a 2-week road trip right after that and came out to Colorado, as a matter of fact. But it was just an experience that I had never, what would you do in that situation? I didn't know how to handle myself as an 18-year-old kid. I know I wasn't a kid, but...
She's lucky the cops weren't called on her. Today, that's what would happen, right? And that's assault.
Yeah.
Saying that's completely unacceptable is really mild statement. Wow. I know that I have talked about this circumstance before, maybe our first or second podcast, I can't remember, but I had a manager. This is 25 years ago. I had left the .com that I had worked for. I was heavily recruited by this company. I knew the president of the company, and he hired me essentially, but I did interview with the chief operating officer, who I did report to. I thought it went fine. They hired me. I gave my notice. I started. It was in my first week, she came in and said that she didn't like me, that she didn't think I should have been hired.
Oh, wow.
And that I had too much baggage from my previous company.
Oh, wow.
Which wasn't true. I gave them the reasons why I was leaving. I think back now, they were good reasons for wanting to leave the .com. Right. They were shrinking. There was not any expansion there for me, and there was a lot of promises here. They hired me as a VP of HR. It was a goal of mine. It was a good salary. There was profit share. I mean, there was a lot of reasons to go. I had regret after her, but it was a sound decision to leave. I didn't have baggage. I'm still friends with some of those people today, but there was not a future role for me there. But it got worse over time. And I think she used to scream in my face.
Oh, no. Get in your face?
She screamed in my face. And the one thing that it will always stick out to me is I would just shut down. I guess I was not in a position to just walk out. I lived in Manhattan. I had a big apartment I had paid for. I had no backup plan. Yeah. I did start looking for a job, but Anyway, but she would scream in my face and she would say, "You're that stupid blank face," because I just would have no expression on my face.
Oh, wow.
It was like a reign of terror for the year and a half that I worked there, which it got better, but every chance she got, she would take an opportunity to verbally abuse me or make me feel stupid or whatever. She got me demoted. And there was I kept my job,
Right.
so they were letting people go. So I ended up taking a demotion and a pay cut to stay.
Right.
But I know she facilitated it. I was doing a lot of work, and I was actually helping with clients as well. I made sure I made myself useful, and I had a lot of good relationships there. But yeah, and then the last thing I will say is at the end, and I know I told my layoff story from there before when I got called into the conference room and. The president said, "Your number's up, kid," whatever.
Yeah.
But they were pending a big client on Long Island, which I had relocated back to Long Island at that point. And the president had promised me, if we get this client, we will put you there and you could run that client. And it was an HR outsourcer as well.
Right.
Software and whatever. I was like, great. And so a week later, I heard that they got the client and the sales manager called me. He goes, "I just want you to know that I was just in a meeting and she put the kibosh on you returning. I know you were promised that you would get this. And she said that your follow through stinks and she doesn't feel comfortable putting you at a client." She goes, which he goes, "I know we all sitting there, we knew is garbage, but I just want to let you know." And the president sent me a dozen roses and did not bring me back.
Wow. So the COO had all of the pull, or he was afraid
so many people left because of her, including, I could go on and on, but just, I think back to that, I would say I don't really spend a lot of time remaining angry or hating people, if you want to call it that. But I despise, like to this day, if I ran into her, like I would have a visceral reaction.
I would too.
Her.
Yeah.
She screamed in my face.
Yeah.
Like numerous times.
Yeah.
Or you could just keep your blank face. That might make her more.
Might be more effective. True.
Yeah, I also have experience with bullying in the workplace. Ironically, also when I was about 19, it seems like when you work at that age, it's especially common. It was a warehouse job, and basically everyone there were like high school or college age, mostly high school. So they were even younger than I was, like 16 or so. And there was this one kid who I don't think was really like doing as much work. And I think a lot of my coworkers started to give him grief on that. And it started to get worse and worse as it wasn't just, hey, pick up the pace. It started to become personal, which they didn't even know the kid. And I could tell that he was really upset by that and he was really hurt. And thankfully, this story has a good ending where I was able to talk to him and say, "Hey, I think a lot of our coworkers are giving you grief. Maybe it's because they just don't know you." And I was able to invite him to eat lunch with us during our lunch break. And because of that, credit to the people who were bullying him, they did try to engage with him and it did stop the bullying, at least to that degree. Some of the people who were bullying got in trouble for other reasons, but that's a different story.
That's good. It had a good outcome and noticed the issue and what you could do to help.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially at that age, because I remember talking to him and he started crying. Like it was can imagine. It was bad.
Oh, I can imagine.
All right, so I'm going to start this segment just by identifying some common bullying. So on top of just the physical bullying that we heard from Holly, there's also verbal, emotional bullying, social exclusionary bullying, as Sean mentioned, psychological manipulation, and power-based bullying, which could be what Regina mentioned, along with obvious verbal and emotional bullying. So the question I have is, in your experience, what are the most common forms of workplace bullying?
I think all of these.
I think it depends on the dynamic too.
Yeah.
Because like coworker to coworker is often a lot more of that verbal, social exclusionary. If you're a boss, I feel like then it's all of the above because you have the power to get away with all of that.
I think it depends. I think some version of manipulation is probably the most common. And that could mean a lot of different things. It could mean getting someone to do work for you and then taking credit for it. There's so many different things that happen in the workplace because not everybody, a lot of people are vying for the top spot or to be number one in whatever they're doing. Right. So I don't know, corporate America just breeds the worst out of people sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot of psychological manipulation, I think, is probably one of the most common because it's less tangible, right? It's harder to prove and more people get away with it.
I think that's the same with like social or exclusionary is like there's ways to do it don't necessarily.
I forgot. Oh, did you want to? I thought you were busy.
Yeah, it's just a passive aggressive sort of way where it's like they can play it off as either just, I forgot, or I was joking, or just like some of that way where they can have plausible deniability.
Yeah. Or it's my lunch. I don't have to spend it with people that I don't want to spend it with. I'm going to take my lunch and go spend it with the 3 other people in the office of a 5-person group.
So the next question I have is, what effects does it have on the culture of a workplace when bullying is prevalent, even when you're not the one being bullied or bullying? And what can HR do about that?
Well, I mean, it destroys a culture. If there's bullying behavior that employees see is not being addressed, or bullies are getting promoted or being rewarded, when real life is like Game of Thrones, it's bad. So I think it's a complete and utter culture killer, for sure. And what can HR do? I don't know if anybody else wants to address that, but absolutely address it, investigate it, discipline for it if necessary, and terminate for it if necessary. If you have a bully in the workplace, if someone is displaying that behavior, it's really not going to get better. Right. They need to grow somewhere else. Take that lesson and learn it and grow somewhere else. I don't think that it's good for the culture to have really overt bullying. I don't think is recoverable, if that's the right word. Now, if the bully is at the top, which does happen, like bullies rise. I mean, we know and they rise not because they're smartest or the best. They rise by being aggressive and by being a bully. So then you probably just need to go somewhere else.
I think those social or exclusionary bullying are a little bit harder to, and the gaslighting is, like you said earlier, a little bit harder to prove. So when you're doing an investigation and you do have a right to go eat lunch with whoever you want to. However, this is how it appears to that person. It's a little bit harder to pinpoint and say, this is bullying, you need to be terminated, when it's apparent to everyone else around that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a small company exclusionary behavior is a unique situation. And I've run into it. I've had a follow-up meeting when people are like, you can't make me like people. You can't and that's true. There's some things that we can't fix, right. But there's other things that are more overt that can be addressed. Yeah. You can't fire someone for not having lunch with somebody else or not liking somebody else. Because sometimes we also don't like that person. Yeah. Like, that's not really bullying. That's just self-preservation sometimes. Yes. Just because someone perceives that they're being bullied doesn't actually mean they're being bullied either.
That's true. Yeah, I think also like things that companies need to be aware of too is bullying obviously affects the person who is the bully and the person who is being bullied, but it also affects people who are not being bullied. Because again, if you see that behavior and it's being unchecked and it's being rewarded, it creates like a whispering kind of culture where they all talk about their problems like in hushed whispers with each other, breeding resentment because they're like, oh, did you see what he did? And nothing happened. And then it creates a resentment among all the employees because they see this behavior that doesn't get checked. And eventually you'll have a problem on your hand where it's not just the person who's being bullied that might have problems with the company or might want to leave. It might be more.
But it also breeds fear. Yeah. Like, you only have to bully one person to correct or change how maybe 10 or 20 people are behaving towards you. Yeah. Nobody wants to be the target of a bully. That's why a lot of times people don't stand up to bullies, because they're afraid. They want to just stay under the radar and like just do their job and put their head down or whatever. That's why bullies get away with the behavior that they do. Yeah.
Especially in a professional context, because you don't want to stand up to bullies, because you don't want to have disciplinary action taken against you. Right. But obviously the bully doesn't care about that, but the person who might want to stand up would.
So next I'm going to give some examples, and we're going to determine whether they're bullying or just annoying, and maybe just expand on them, see where they could become bullying. So the first example is a manager always criticizes one employee's work during team meetings, but offers praise privately.
I feel like that could constitute bullying if escalated. I don't think the behavior itself is necessarily bullying, just annoying. But I could see if like...
I don't know if I agree with you, because if he's calling him out in team meetings specifically, that is borderline bullying behavior, especially if he's praising him privately. Like,
I guess it's the nature of the criticism. Oh yeah. Because if it's just critiquing the work, like saying, "Oh, this was needed to be fixed" or whatever, that's a little different. If it is like calling out, like saying, "Oh, you did such a bad job," then yeah, I would say that's escalation. That's definitely bullying.
I would take that as bullying. If it's constantly every team meeting, you're criticizing some piece of my work and never giving me any compliments compliments in front of my teammates. And I'm sure that my teammates are assuming that I am not doing a good job. I'm not effective in what I've been hired to do. But behind closed doors, he's saying I'm the greatest thing. He or she's saying I'm the greatest thing there is. I would find another job.
I think we're saying it's bullying based on this criteria because we're saying bullying or annoying. Probably this is highly inappropriate. I don't know if I would call it bullying if we were just talking about this at face value.
Yeah.
So I think that's where Sean's coming from.
It was good. I was feeling bullied into choosing a different answer.
I'm pretty glad I nipped this in the bud right now.
I have something to report.
This is why we talk it out.
So the next example is you're consistently left off calendar invites for optional team activities, even though everyone else is included.
That's some version of bullying behavior for sure.
See, and I would say annoying, but I would like to be left off as a lot of calendar invites.
It's targeted. They're repeatedly leaving this one person off of that everybody's invited to. That seems targeted.
If it's intentional, I think it's absolutely bullying. I know there are situations where maybe like you weren't on the distribution list and maybe that's just an error that needs to be fixed. But if that is something that is like an intentional, then absolutely, I would think that would be bullying.
So the next one is your teammate constantly talks over you in meetings, but never seems to interrupt anyone else.
I'm going to go with annoying.
It's infuriating. That's the first word that comes to mind. But if we only have these two options, I would say it's somewhere in between those two things. Because again, if they're only doing it to you, that's maybe not overtly bullying, but it's targeted. Well, they have an issue with you.
Yeah. I think in those instances too, I just had this conversation.
We have two options here, Holly.
I know, but I want to give you, I just had this conversation with my daughter and somebody that was interrupting her or making noises or scoffing at her when she was speaking. And I said, call them out in that moment. Acknowledge what they're doing and acknowledge what they're doing to the rest of the people. Granted, my daughter's 13, but I want her to feel empowered. And I think you should call people out who are intentionally doing these things to get under your skin. Just my opinion.
I agree. Absolutely.
Like we said, bullies do what they do because they don't think they're going to be stood up to. And most of them will shrink in the face of any sort of resistance.
Yeah.
All right. Next is someone jokes about your workload being, quote, light after you return from FMLA leave.
That's just rude.
That's ignorance. So I don't know if it's bullying or not. I guess it would depend on what else is happening, but it's certainly annoying.
Annoying. Yeah, I'm going with annoying.
Next is a manager frequently jokes about your mistakes, even minor ones, during staff meetings.
That's part of that gaslighting. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't really mean it. It was a joke.
Yeah.
I'm going with bullying.
I think
it's only
so
a joke if we're all laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Next is a teammate rolls their eyes when you speak, but never directly says anything.
Some people cannot control their facial expressions no matter how hard they try. It may not be bullying, like they're intentionally doing it. So I would say more annoying.
Maybe they're rolling eyes at someone else being bullying.
Maybe. So is it annoying? Absolutely. But some people truly cannot control their facial expressions.
I guess it would be what situation are they rolling your eyes? Is it every time you speak or is it because, yeah, if you say something, they roll their eyes. Sure. Maybe they can't control yourselves, but if they're doing it consistently, it's what am I saying that makes you roll your eyes every single time?
That would go back to call them out in the moment.
Yeah.
Next is you've been excluded from a group chat where work-related decisions are discussed informally.
It's some version of bullying for sure. Not by the traditional sense, but
much like Holly likes to be left off group invites, I like to be left off of team chats.
Holly does not want to be left over the invite. She just doesn't want to go.
Fair.
Oh, okay. You want the invite, just not
I want the invite, but I want the option to say no.
Yeah, the ability to RSVP, no. So let's discuss this one further. Where would this become bullying and where would it just sit at annoying?
I think I would want to know the intention behind being left off of the informal chat before I make a decision to if it's bullying or annoying. If you're intentionally leaving me off because you don't want my opinion, but yet it has so much to do with my role and how I function as a member of the organization, I would think that could be considered as bullying. But if it's truly just there are too many people in the group and too many opinions, and I really want to get the ball rolling and have some sort of trajectory on a process improvement or whatever it is, then that would just be annoying.
I don't know. They're saying that they're making decisions in this work-related chat, right?
Yeah.
So you're excluded from a group where work-related decisions are discussed informally. I'm not sure that it's not already that. It's just that it's not what we typically think of as bullying, right? This is exclusionary behavior. They don't want you to be involved. They don't want your input, and they want you to feel slighted. They have to know that you're going to find out that this chat exists because someone else is going to mention it, even if not on purpose. I don't know what more would have to be done. It's already not great.
I mean, it's kind of like the modern day equivalent of like the inner circle. So people are making meetings and you're on the outside. I think that would be considered bullying because, again, like you said, what if they find out? I think the point is it doesn't matter that you find out. It's like you're not the one making decisions. And I think that does cross the line to bullying with that intent of it doesn't matter if or not, you're going to be left out because you're not the one making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the next scenario is a coworker frequently shares memes or jokes that subtly target your background or beliefs.
That's harassment.
I was going to say that's harassment.
But it's definitely bullying.
Yeah.
For sure.
That one was pretty cut and dry. The next one is someone on your team regularly brings up a past mistake long after it's been resolved.
I guess that's more annoying. I guess it just depends on how far this person takes it.
Yeah.
I don't think at face value it's bullying, but it's definitely whoever keeps bringing up that past mistake. Clearly, they haven't resolved that issue.
They don't like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go with annoying. Really, I would want to know the intent behind it or, but it's definitely annoying.
Could this be an example of someone perceiving something as bullying that isn't intended as bullying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's where some of these get trickier, especially with the social exclusion and like some of the verbal stuff it's can be really hard to parse if that's bullying or not. And that's why people do it is because they can get away with it easier because they can hide behind the curtain of a joke or oh, that's not what I meant. That was not my intent.
Yeah.
All right. And lastly, you're always the last to know about department updates that affect your role. Seems like everyone else has been informed. You're last.
I don't think that's bullying. And not at face value. It's not. Clearly, you don't have a good relationship with your manager. That could be your fault.
It's really annoying, but I don't know about it's not bullying.
Yeah.
Still being informed, just last.
Yeah.
And maybe some self-reflection. Why are you being left last?
Yeah.
Is that something on you?
Why weren't you involved in the decision-making process? Yeah.
Did you not accept the invite to the meeting?
Touche.
It's because you're excluded from the group chat where they informally discussed it. All right. So to conclude, a question I have is, what forms of bullying do you feel often go overlooked or just generally get ignored?
I think the exclusion, the social exclusion of an employee often get overlooked or ignored until the employee brings it to someone else's attention.
I also think the psychological manipulation, because if it's successful, the person doesn't know they're being manipulated, or they might take a while to realize it. And then at that time, it's harder to prove.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this in the previous ones, but this isn't exactly bullying, obviously, but incivility has been the topic of SHRM for the past year. So it's like almost sometimes the death by 1,000 cuts type of situation, just continually, incivil behavior or dialogue that happens from potentially one person. And it's not overtly bullying, but when you combine it all together, I think sometimes it can cross that bridge, and it's often not addressed. People sometimes go out of their way. It's funny. I don't know if all of you have seen the video of the rage baiter. She was in New York City. She was in the Bronx, and she was asking, this is a little political, but she was asking this woman's opinion about Planned Parenthood. And were having a very interesting conversation. The woman who she stopped was just super educated on a lot of different things. And then the conversation took, this woman was super knowledgeable.
Right.
And, but the woman kept on peppering away and saying things that, you know, she was a rage baiter.
Right.
For sure. And the woman literally did like a 2-pop in her face, like out of nowhere, like literally
The
punched.
nice, smart lady?
She clocked her in the face, like a double
gosh.
clock. And it was like, oh my gosh. And in the comments, obviously on the video, was like, you know, rage baiters really should stay online and not be in person. Because that's the behavior. But overtly, it was shocking to me because she was so well spoken. That's what she reverted to. But sometimes it's, again, the death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
I just think everybody has a limit to what they'll put up with. And bullies or bullying, they count on that. They count on you losing your cool, on you being the one. And then this woman's probably going to get assault charges. And she was absolutely... I'm not actually going to say any more than that, but you know, like I'm not justifying her punching her, but you know, other people commented that they. So,
I mean,
yeah,
getting punched is what she wanted. It's the blank face.
Oh,
thing.
she was on video with the blood on her face, and yeah, that gave her a lot of. It gave her a voice.
Yeah,
actually, what she really nobody would have seen this whole conversation had that not happened. Yeah.
I think it goes to show, like when we were going through, is it bullying or annoying? A lot of that is a matter of degrees, because it's okay. If this happened once, maybe it's just annoying. If this happened twice, it's maybe just annoying. But if it happens consistently, repetitively, it might be a behavior of bullying, because again, that's how they get away with it. The death by 1,000 cuts is, oh, this is harmless. Like, I shouldn't get in trouble for this. And maybe a manager who's on the outside of the situation would be like, yeah, that's not bullying. But what it is, it's a pattern. And it's a pattern they're doing intentionally. Yep. And that, I think, does constitute bullying.
All right, so next we go to Ask HR, where we go to the online forum where people ask questions to professionals and get answers. This comes from user babygirl95. It's from New York. And it is titled, Coworker Called Me a Bitch. I work for a corporate bank. We're now back to office 5 days a week. We recently moved to new seats on our floor. Thursday was the 4th day in our new spots. From Monday to Wednesday, my coworker, who sits next to me, had been putting his personal items in my desk drawer at the end of each day. The drawer was packed with his stuff. On Wednesday morning, I arrived to find all my belongings, my iPhone charger, Stanley Cup, and phone holder, moved out and placed on top of my desk. I asked him if he could use a locker instead of putting his things in with mine. He didn't respond. Then on Thursday, he started putting his stuff in my drawer again, and I said, hey, can you please use a locker instead? He replied, oh, so you're gonna be a bitch. I froze. My face turned red. I was completely shocked that I was just called a bitch at work and in front of my other coworkers. A couple minutes later, I managed to ask, did you seriously call me a name? He said, oh, I thought we were joking, and then got up and left for the day. My boss had just sat down nearby, and one of my other coworkers was there too. When my boss started talking about this coworker, I turned around and said, hey, you know that he just called me a bitch? The other coworker said, yeah, I heard that. I thought he was joking. I'm a woman. He's a man. You don't just call a woman a bitch, especially at work. We've both been there for about 3 months. We're equals. The next day, my boss asked me what really happened. I told him. He asked, could he have been joking? He also said, I'm not defending him, twice, which is of note. He said he's taking it seriously and would talk to him and escalate it. But I still felt uneasy, like he didn't fully believe me or trust my judgment of the situation. Now I'm wondering if I should go directly to HR.
There is a lot to unpack there. That's a lot. First of all, she's not overreacting.
No.
I'm not sure if I'm more upset about him calling her the B word or not,
respecting her personal space.
Right, respecting her boundaries. Thank you. I couldn't get the words out because I'm flustered by the story.
Yes.
That is crazy. He took her First of all, she should ask for a key and she should lock her drawers.
Yeah.
Or get a key yourself. Buy
a drawer lock.
Yeah. Well, like they sell, you could buy those and you just pop it in. I don't know how secure it is, but why is he using her space? That's some kind of weird power play.
Agreed.
That is bizarre. Like, why doesn't he have enough space? Like, how much stuff is he bringing to work? He's only been there 3 months.
Right. It's a manipulation tactic.
Right. It's something. Like, they're on the same playing field, the same level, but he doesn't want to be. That's for sure. So that's something right there. Yeah.
It also stands out to me that even the managers, the coworkers were all like, could he be joking? And I don't think that's the right question, because that's not an appropriate joke to have at work, regardless if that's your relationship or not. But also, if you call someone that, it doesn't matter if they were joking. That's an inappropriate thing to say. And it shouldn't matter the intent if he was joking or not.
But it's, again, I said this earlier, it's only a joke if both of you were laughing.
Right.
Yeah.
And gender matters and language matters. So the fact that a man is calling, her a bitch, that's a power dynamic that he's trying to create.
Yeah.
So that is highly inappropriate. And the fact that the coworker said, I thought they were joking. Well, actually, I'm curious if that coworker is a man or a woman. And I don't even know if it matters, but that's really bothersome to me too, because we didn't ask for your opinion.
Right.
We just asked if you heard. Actually, they didn't ask. They just piped in. So why are you even giving your opinion? That's your interpretation.
And his power play started as soon as he started moving his stuff into the desk drawers. And then second phase of his power play was calling her a bitch and everybody else saying, it was just a joke. It was just a joke. That doesn't make it okay.
And for the first time ever, I can maybe use my major here, my psychology major, because I took a psychology of humor course. And what we had talked about is humor is used to push boundaries safely. Mm-hmm. It is used to be able, and that's why you see a lot of people do offensive things and say, I'm just joking. It's because they want to be able to test the waters to see if they're able to say this thing and to be socially accepted, right? And have the fallback of a joke to say, no, I was just joking, and have that safety. And so it's clear to me that this man was doing just that, is he was trying to push that boundary. He's probably trying to do a power move, and he wanted the safety in case it blew up in his face.
I just don't even know if this person should be a manager. We've talked about that before, but first of all, the manager saying, could this have been a joke?
Shouldn't matter.
That shouldn't be part of his questioning.
And then, this, if someone says, I'm not defending them, means you're about to start defending them almost 100% of the time. So I'm heated over this, actually.
Do we have any updates?
No, this was actually posted very recently. I kept the link on here so we can look, but the only updates that were given were the fact that everyone, in fact, gets their own drawer, which is important. And that's about it. But
he doesn't want her to have a drawer. He wants to take her drawer. He wants his and hers.
I think I would definitely, this person's last question said, should I go directly to HR? I would go to HR. Yes, 100%.
100% document it, send extremely unemotional, factual email. Right. Definitely leave in about the draw. I mean, to me, the draw, I know my accent with that word, is almost worse.
Agreed.
Than him calling her the B word, but that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
They work in corporate banking. There is nothing more stuffy than that. Let me tell you something. HR is going to take that very seriously, especially because there was a witness.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether he was joking or not, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
And don't touch my belongings at work.
You touched my Stanley Cup?
Especially if you get your own drawer. There's just no other explanation of why he would.
Her drawer.
Yeah, there is no other explanation of why he would not use his own. Because if they get their own drawer, I don't know if that's closer to. There's no reasonable explanation other than that he doesn't respect her.
He took her. He took her stuff out of it.
Yeah.
To put his own stuff in. That's crazy behavior.
And then icing on the cake, he called her a B word. Okay, he clearly does not respect her. That should be addressed, and HR should take it seriously.
That's all the time we have for today. Sean, I want to thank you for joining us and contributing.
Yeah, I'm glad I accepted the meeting invite.
And of course, thank you all for listening. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please subscribe and leave a review. If you have any HR stories or questions to share, message us on Instagram at hr.stew. I'm Holly.
And I'm Regina.
And we'll see you next time on HR Stew.